What's going on, guys? This is Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ, and I'm back again with another great episode. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, ate good. I know you guys see the fresh cut, a little change it up, but let's get right into it. Week 13, this is the final regular season for fantasy football before playoffs. Playoffs are around the corner. You need to cut the dead weight that's been sitting on your bench for the past 3 to 4 weeks and cut the guy that hasn't been waking up. I know people have been giving some guys that I'm going to touch today some chances, to show some life coming off the bench, but evidently nothing has happened, or they just become dead weight due to trades, injuries, etc., whatever the case may be. But we're getting into week 13. Let's get right into the episode. So, week 13, playoffs are basically here, people. Time to cut the dead weight. Time to open your eyes to guys that are starting to make a splash, that has a high ceiling, that can help your team out going into the playoffs. Now, this episode is going to be basically for the guys that are just slightly above 500. For the guys that are struggling, at certain positions, wide receiver, quarterback, running back, whatever the case may be, some of these guys can help you out. This is basically to the audience that are trying to get that 6th seed, trying to get into the playoffs, that are just that close to being into the playoffs, and that could possibly make a splash into the playoffs, going into the championship to bring the gold home. Now, this first guy, we've been giving him chances week after week. Jordan Howard. It's clear that it's the Cohen show, and being with Trubisky out last week, that we would think that, they would lean into the running game. That's usually a sign to where, most teams that are going into the week with the backup quarterback, they're going to lean onto the running game to where, it would help them out. But obviously that was the opposite that the Bears had planned, and Howard once again is just non-existent. His last 3 games, Detroit, he had 4.7 points. Then he put up 8 points, which is just okay, I guess. But he's a RB1 caliber guy, 1,000-yard seasons for the past 4 seasons. But this year, it looks like it's the Cohen show. So, put up a whopping 2 points against the Lions this past Sunday. So, Jordan Howard's droppable at this point. He's dead weight, people. He is not going to help you get into the playoffs. He's not going to help you in the playoffs. So, it's like to the point where Jordan Howard is droppable at this point. It's the Cohen show, and I guess this is a lesson. I guess this is something like a mental note to take into for next year's draft, that it's basically Tarik Cohen and then Jordan Howard. Because Sunday we've seen that this out of nowhere guy basically just come in and take touches from Howard. So it's like, it's not looking too good for Howard. I don't know how he comes off, 4 straight seasons, 3 straight seasons of 1,000 yards, and he was like the underrated running back that was just getting looked over to where he was busting 1,000 yards year after year. But it looks like this year has been very disappointing for Jordan Howard. Now, the replacement for Jordan Howard, possibly where you can still grab him off of waivers right now, 46% owned right now in leagues. Last week it was under 30% owned, but obviously this guy is making noise. Gus Edwards put up 118 yards last week and then 115 yards the next week. So this guy is just going and rolling. 100-yard games, that was the first time that the Ravens had back-to-back 100-yard games since Justin Forsett. This guy, Gus Edwards, is making a splash. He's making a name for himself. But I will say this. This is the only thing that's holding me back to go 100% on Gus Edwards. He has Alex Collins coming back from injury, and we're not too sure how that's going to play into his production, but I still see him being a solid RB2 for you guys. He's definitely going to still see the type of production where he's going to be the goal line back, and he's going to see the touches, and you still have Lamar Jackson still running the ball a lot, but we've seen that change up to where Gus Edwards is still putting up 100 yards. So that's good signs that the Ravens are running the ball very well, and the O-line is still healthy and keeping intact. I got them ranked probably top 5 in my O-line, so where running backs should be excelling to, you know, seeing the end zone, etc. But Alex Collins has just been underwhelming, and he's been hot and cold week after week. But Gus Edwards is on a nice little roll right now, and I believe that he can help your team out going into this next week and going into the playoffs. If you guys make the playoffs off of Gus Edwards, he's a waiver wire hero. Just like Alex Collins last year, if we think about it. Turned up at the end of the season, which made Alex Collins jump up in rankings in my preseason, you know, pre-draft rankings. So seems to be trending right now in you know, Baltimore with the running backs, you know, towards the end of the season, where they're helping guys out off of waiver wire and they just excel all the way into the playoffs. But that's another thing. So ultimately, Gus Edwards is on a roll right now. He needs to be added to people's rosters right now. He's a solid RB2. He's seen the end zone, so he must be added. But that's definitely a great upgrade over Jordan Howard, because Jordan Howard has been disappointing this entire season, and I think Gus Edwards is definitely going to be used a lot in that backfield. Even with Lamar Jackson running, still, it is what it is there. And Joe Flacco may be coming back, he may not be, who knows. So there could be a change up at quarterback, but I really don't think that affects Gus Edwards' production, because he's put up 100-yard games back to back. So Gus Edwards is the great replacement for Jordan Howard. Get rid of the dead weight. So next up, I don't know why this guy is still on some rosters. I'm looking through, you know, the couple leagues that I'm in, and Wendell Smallwood is still on people's benches, as if he's gonna pop up and help you out in the playoffs or to get to the playoffs. Remember, this is to my audience that are slightly above 500 in the games and standings, so it's to the point where you got to get guys off a waiver that's going to help your team. Now, Smallwood has seen a very huge decline since Josh Adams came into the picture. As per head coach, Josh Adams basically is going to take the starting job and run away with it. He's taken RB1 workload, full workload, and Smallwood for the past 3 weeks has been non-existent. We have 4.9 points, and then we have, against New Orleans, negative 0.4 points, and then the week after that, 0 points, people. Not looking good. Dead weight. He should have been gone. I don't know why he's still owned in so many leagues. He needs to be dropped and make space for guys that can contribute to your team going into the playoffs to bring home the gold. That is the key point of this whole thing. You don't want to keep dead weight this far into the season on your bench or even into your starting lineups. Like, what are you thinking? Like, possible replacement for Smallwood right now, I believe, is LeGarrette Blount. Put up 23 points against the Bears last week, and he has the Rams next week, who are struggling against the run. Now, that is good news for Blount owners, because not many people own him. 18% right now he's owned in all leagues. 18% only owners own him. So he's still available in some leagues, and he will see the goal line. He will see RB1 workload. He's a solid low-end RB2, I would say, just for a guy to replace somebody that's keeping dead weight on your bench, Smallwood. Blount will come in and produce points going into this next week and possibly going into the playoffs, but that's all depending on Kieran Johnson's health. Now, with Kieran Johnson's sideline, Blount has been out-snapping Theo Riddick, and is Amir Dooley even alive anymore? But it's clear that Blount has taken the RB1 role while Johnson's sideline. Now, the status on his health is not too sure, but I don't see him coming into next week against the Rams, which we want Blount to play in, because he will see the end zone. I guarantee it. I can almost guarantee it. I'm telling you, the Rams cannot stop the run. But anyway, Blount is a great replacement for Smallwood. So please, people, he's only owned in 18% of leagues right now. He's definitely a great pickup who's liable to see the end zone next week. If you're struggling at running back, I have to stress this. If you're struggling at running back, you're struggling at your flex or anything like that, Blount could contribute. You put up 23 points against the Bears last week, people. And the Bears defense is nothing to be slept on. But he has the Rams defense this week, who are struggling against the run, who have been all season. So Blount can definitely be a nice tool for you to get into the playoffs. If this game is do or die, Blount definitely needs to be in your lineup this week. So we got Nelson Agholor. I got him on my basically droppable list at this point. He's become non-existent into that Eagles offense with the addition of Golden Tate. Now, he's put up 10 points, which was impressive, I guess. And then he put up 0 points against New Orleans. And then against the Giants, he put up 1.7 points, people. So he's non-existent. I don't see him helping your fantasy team get into the playoffs or helping to contribute to that team once you're in the championship or in the semi or quarterfinals. So this needs to be stressed onto some of these owners. Get rid of the dead weight. You need to put guys on your roster that are going to contribute to the team to bring home the gold. To bring home this. I cannot stress this. We want to come home with this big plaque, with this big belt, so we can show off and gloat and all that stuff. We need to get rid of the dead weight. I'm going to keep stressing this the entire episode until people understand. The dead weight is what keeps you back from going further into the playoffs, to get you to the playoffs, because you're relying and still hoping and praying these guys show life, sitting on your bench or sitting into your starting lineup, and they do nothing. They burn you week after week. Can't stress that enough, especially if this week is do or die, people. Do or die. Now, a possible replacement, which I'm not too high on, but it needs to be addressed, that John Ross needs to be picked up as a stash. Because for the simple fact that he's scored in 3 straight games, people, making him fantasy relevant. He's a solid flex, maybe wide receiver 3 at this point going into the matchup that he has. There's no real timeline on AJ Green also, and Andy Dalton was just put on IR. So these are all things that you need to just keep in the back of your head. But this guy is scoring 3 games in a row, probably 4 games in a row. He's finding the end zone somehow. So all this workload that he's getting, all these targets he's seeing, is because of AJ Green out. Tyler Boyd's still doing his thing. He had a little slow start, and he had a slump last week and the week before that, but it looks like he's back to business, taking advantage of AJ Green being out. So John Ross is definitely a guy that you need to just think and put into the position if you're dealing with the Nelson Agholors of the world. If you're dealing with Nelson Agholor into your flex or wide receiver 3, even into your starting lineup, you need to just take this chance on John Ross, because the kid is scoring. He's putting fantasy relevancy into his name. So it's kind of like the guy's scoring, he's finding the end zone. So that's the people you want in your starting lineup. Do or die. John Ross is only owned in 18.5% of leagues right now, people. So he's an easy pickup. He's an easy stash. You want guys that are going to contribute to your team going into the playoffs. Guys that are finding the end zone. Nelson Agholor, not finding the end zone. John Ross, last 3 games, found the end zone. I can't stress that enough, people. Get rid of the dead weight. Now, the Deshaun Jackson owners, I know you guys are sitting in limbo right now, but I think it's time to let go and kind of just move on, because it's not good for any wide receiver dealing with, you know, a QB change week after week when one does bad and one does good, and then they flip-flop the next week to where they're both shit. Both the quarterbacks are shit. The Bucks are shit. I'm sorry, I have to say it, but no wide receiver is going to be good. No wide receiver's production is going to be good with a constant QB change. But even with that going on, it looks like Deshaun Jackson's dealing with some sort of hand injury. He could possibly miss some time, which can affect his production either way if he tries to play through it, because we've seen that he only had 3 catches last week, and that definitely played a damper into his production of catching the ball. He's a wide receiver, so a hand injury is definitely vital to him. So with that being said, going into the playoffs, I don't see him contributing to a playoff team. I don't see him helping you out. So it might be to the point where you have to drop Deshaun Jackson and bring in somebody that can help you, that is finding the end zone. For the past 3 weeks, Deshaun Jackson has just put up below average numbers, and it's to the point where we don't know if that hand injury happened 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever the case may be. It's just his numbers have been very below average. All in all, it's hard to see him contributing to a playoff team, helping you get some wins to bring home the gold. Now, possible replacement, only owned in 6% of leagues right now. Only 6% of leagues. Curtis Samuel. I've said this name before, where I believe that he can step in, and with proven opportunity, he has found the end zone back-to-back games. With Devin Funchess sideline, obviously, this is why he's seeing such a increase in snaps. Like, he's played 92% of snaps last week, so that, I think that was his highest snap count of the year. But is Devin Funchess a #1 wide receiver? That has been put into question with his production. He's getting the targets, but he's not showing the production that we want him to put out, being the #1 wide receiver. So Devin Funchess definitely is put into question if he's the #1 wide receiver, but Curtis Samuel, with given opportunity, has showed that he can produce. Now, with Devin Funchess coming back from injury, it's kind of like we don't know where Curtis Samuel will sit into that offense. But remember I said this is week 13, do or die. He has the Bucs this week. So Curtis Samuel is definitely a great addition. If you're dealing with Deshaun Jackson sitting in limbo with a hand injury, Curtis Samuel can possibly put up big numbers that game with Devin Funchess still being out, obviously. But Curtis Samuel has shown what opportunity he can play. He could ball out. I think he's a solid wide receiver 3 flex play this week, especially with the matchup, people. Curtis Samuel against the Bucs, I'm taking that all day. The Bucs defense is shit, has been shit. The whole Bucs organization is shit. They need to just get rid of the team. They're the Bobcats of the goddamn NFL. Get rid of them. But anyway, I'm not going to shit on their whole dynasty like that, but Curtis Samuel is definitely a nice little plug and play with the likes of Deshaun Jackson missing some time. Now, with that being said, Marvin Jones has been put on IR. He is out for the season, so that means Kenny Golladay target increase is just going to go skyrocket. But that's one thing I just want to put a note on real quick. But the Chris Hoagland owners right now are suffering because, again, another guy that I see just on a bunch of rosters. He has very underwhelming numbers. He had a disappointing season, I would say, being with the addition of Josh Gordon and Edelman coming back and Gronk playing whenever he can, basically. And so his target count has dropped tremendously. I'll just go back the past 4 weeks. The past 4 weeks, he has not seen more than 2 targets a game. And there's 2 games out of there where he didn't catch any of those balls, people. So another dead weight player. He needs to go. You got to find somebody else off the waivers or trade. I know a lot of trade deadlines are gone, but some people like to play it all the way into December, so I'm speaking to that audience. But definitely need to find an addition to the team that's going to contribute to your fantasy football playoff team, people. Now, Chris Hoagland, I had high hopes going into the draft this year. I'm not going to lie. I was on that wave to where he was like, you know, my 8th round pick to be my complete sleeper, just go off and be my wide receiver 3 flex all year long. But obviously the fantasy guys had other plans in order. Now, a guy that I think can definitely help you out with the do or die situation is Dante Pettis. With Marquise Goodwin out, he was inactive for personal reasons, and you got Pierre Garçon dealing with a knee injury. So with or without Goodwin in the lineup, I believe Dante Pettis can show and produce good numbers. 77 yards, and you saw the end zone. He had 9 targets that game, so he led the San Fran wide receiver corps. So it looks like he was being able to give opportunity and produce. So I like his ceiling. I'll just say that. He's a wide receiver 3 flex also. So with or without Goodwin on the field, I do believe Pettis can be a nice little contribute to the playoff team and help you bring home the gold. I'm going to keep stressing that. You want to bring home the gold. Nobody wants to see 2nd or 3rd place. No, we want to win. We want to win it all. He's been dealing with injury all this season, so he had a nice little 1st and 2nd game, but then that's when the injury happened. So he was on a nice little roll. He was just getting hot, I would say. So with him having a performance that he had last week with 77 yards and seeing the end zone, leading the team in targets out of wide receivers, so that's good signs that Dante Pettis has something going on here. He's heating up. When given opportunity, Pettis can show that he's a baller, showing that he can run crisp routes. He has good hands. I don't really see him dropping balls much, but with that being said, you need to have a nice little addition to the playoff team. You have a nice little addition to help to get to the playoffs. Now, like I said, Chris Hoagland, I had high hopes for, but it looks like with all the wide receiver rotations going on, he just doesn't fit into that offense. He doesn't fit onto your roster, I should say. Because not seeing over 2 targets the last 4 weeks and then 2 games you drop both of those targets, dead weight, gotta go. Now, again, who knows? Chris Hoagland, maybe next year, you know, things will happen via trade. Gronk retires, Brady retires, whatever. We don't know. We just gotta just say it's a dub. So I want to touch on to the Marvin Jones situation earlier that I spoke about. He is on IR. He is out for the season. So you're probably looking for a nice little replacement. In PPR formats, I think Bruce Ellington will be a nice little addition to your team. He has 16 targets in the last 2 weeks and 12 catches in the last 2 weeks. So he's liable to take into that Marvin Jones role. He's jumped over TJ Jones. I don't think he's going to cut into any snap counts there. It looks like Bruce Ellington has solidified his point in case to be the nice little wide receiver 2 outside of Kenny Golladay. So I do like the matchup he has against the Rams this week, but I'm not saying again to go start him. It's just that the Rams defense has been struggling with guys playing in the slot, going down deep, so you never know. Bruce Ellington could pop off. Again, if you're absolutely struggling, why not go ahead and throw him a start into the flex or wide receiver 3 position. So that wraps up another episode of Real Deal Fantasy HQ. Like and subscribe for me. Leave a comment below on what you thought about the episode. And people, please remember, this is do or die week, baby. Week 13, last regular season of fantasy, and then playoffs are here. Best of luck to my guys that are going to the playoffs, that are trying to make it to the playoffs. I want you guys to bring home the gold, baby. So I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ. Peace.